Hello ladies and gentlemen, today's guide will be the most requested guide that I read pretty much everywhere. It'll be about pivoting. So what is pivoting and what is transitioning in Teamfight Tactics? Essentially what it is, in layman's terms, is you want to go a certain comp you have in mind and you can't do it. So how do you get out of this comp and go to another comp without dying? We're going to focus this guide mainly on the aspect of pivoting or transitioning late game. This is because usually what happens in the early mid game is this. Early game, you just throw power onto the board. You throw whatever 2-star units you can find and combine and try to make the best kind of small synergy comp you can with it. Synergies don't really start kicking in until kind of the late game, especially when you start to want to talk about pivoting and transitioning into other situations. Most of the times, a lot of comps are built around 4 cost and 5 cost units in the game. It sounds crazy, but when you learn to pivot and you learn to transition at the very beginning, you learn to transition and pivot around these 4 and 5 cost units. So how do we get 4 cost units and how do we get 5 cost units in the game? Let's quickly look back toward the percentage probability of you getting a 4 or 5 cost at early levels. So at level 5, you have a 3% chance of getting a 4 cost unit and a 0% chance of getting a 5 cost unit. At level 6, you have a 10% chance of getting a 4 cost unit and a 0.5% chance of getting a 5 cost unit. And at level 7, you have a 15% chance of getting a 4 cost unit and I think a 2% chance of getting a 5 cost unit. These are the big levels for you to learn how to transition and to look toward transitions or pivots with your comp. So a good example of a situation where you're going to need to pivot is, let's say you're an assassin player and you found a perfect assassin opener. You have Kha'Zix to Pike and Zed, and all of a sudden you no longer see assassins. None of the assassins start coming up anymore, but you find a brand, and all of a sudden brand allows you to go elementalist. That's the big giveaway, because elementalists require 3 elementalist brand. Before brand, you're only able to get Kennen as well as Lissandra, but once you get brand, you can always go backwards to find the other 2 a lot easier. The chances of you getting the other 2 are between 20 to 30% on a roll, at least for their tier, and the chances of you getting the 4 costs are pretty slim. So usually what happens when you look toward pivots is you find the important unit first and work backwards for any of the synergies that you need afterwards. So you find the brand and then you start building the ninja comp with brand and elementalist, and then all of a sudden you pivoted from going 6 assassins, what your original idea was, to going Kali Zed, 3 assassin, 3 elementalist, 4 ninja combination. And that's something that only happened because you had the initial pieces to go 6 assassins and some of the ninja pieces, and then you found brand, which allowed you to go elementalist. A different example of this would be, let's say that you're looking to find a 6 sorcerer comp, but how do you get 6 sorcerers? Like, is it humanly possible to get 6 sorcerers without Karthus or Aurelion Sol? The answer is no, until TF comes out, which then the answer is you can, but until that unit comes out, 6 sorcerer is not even an option for a player, which means you need the 4 cost sorcerer or the 5 cost sorcerer to even consider going this comp. So before you can pivot towards sorcerers, towards 6, you just need 3, and then you can consider 6 once you find one or the other. The importance of 4-star units cannot be understated. You have units like Draven can hard carry your comp strictly through damage by itself. A lot of comps pivot and transition around Draven. So gunslingers are a good example of a comp where it's like, let's say you're not really going anywhere with gunslingers. A lot of the items like rapid fire cannon or like BT potentially on your gunslingers can function very well on your Draven, and Draven is just a super hard hitting attack damage carry. So once you find the Draven, you could transition into more of a Draven oriented Imperial comp, but you can only transition that way when you find the 4 cost Draven, because he's the linchpin of the composition. So 4 cost units are extremely valuable and extremely important in being able to fill out and flesh out your final composition. Another example of a composition that is very difficult to do without 4 stars is 4 Rangers. So you need Kindred as the 4th Ranger to function with the 4 Ranger passive. And let's say you just don't find Kindred. It's not something that happens. So what can you do as a player to kind of counteract the inability for you to find a core 4-star for your composition? Well, you have to look at the built-in synergies for the rest of your kit. Usually what happens if you can't find the Kindred is you're looking at Ashe as well as Varus, which are two kind of better, more higher cost rangers, and trying to build stuff from them. Whether it's glacial or demon, that's a very common kind of transitional route as you're waiting to find a kindred. So maybe you want to run, you know, Sedge, or you want to run, well, a standard comp with rangers has Sedge Ash, but let's say you want to run Volibear plus Braum to kind of wait and kind of wait for your kindred. Because a lot of times the biggest problem for players in this game is the fact that like they're tunneled in on a very, very specific composition, but in reality the best part and the best trait you can have as a player is the flexibility to be able to run what the game gives you. So rangers can do anything from going, you know, ranger knight frontline to maybe you never find the knights, never find what you're looking for knight wise. You don't find the Mordekaiser ever, you don't have much Sejuani, even if you might want to find it, but you find Brand. All of a sudden you're able to get an elementalist glacial pivot with Brand, Lissandra, and to some extent Anivia as key pieces of your ranger composition. You notice that Elementalist is the example I use a lot, mainly because Elementalist is the easiest pivot to understand because it all kind of flexes on one specific unit, and it's a very tiny synergy that only costs 3 units that you can easily go back for. Another thing I didn't mention is that the 4 cost units and 5 cost units in this game are very limited in quantity. There are only 13 4 cost units in the game and 10 5 cost units, which means, let's say you get the early Brand. There's only 12 left, which means it's less likely for your opponents to get them, and even if they do get them, once they find out they can't get a 2-star as easily as someone who already has multiple copies, then they will be more likely to give up on the Brand than you. So finding the early 4 cost units is super important, and understanding how the quantity of the units and the scarcity of the units helps a lot in being able to understand their relative value in this game. We kind of talked about damage oriented pivots with Brand as well as Draven, but let's talk about the CC frontline. I said all the best frontline units in the game are CC tank or tanks. So it's Cho'Gath, Gnar, and Sejuani. Some of the times you're not going to be able to get the one that you want. So let's say you're running a composition like, you know, Rangers that really wants you to have Sedge, but you're only given Cho'Gath or you're only given Gnars. Don't be mad about that. A lot of times people will hold on to these 4 cost units and see what stabilizes first into a 2-star, and then run whatever happens first, and maybe save, you know, a 1-star Sedge until you find more and you can replace the temporary unit. So people tend to tunnel too hard on what the perfect comp looks like, but in reality you're only going to get a perfect comp probably 2 out of 8 games, 2 out of 10 games. Realistically speaking, I almost never get a perfect comp that I want. It's always I have to mix and match and try my best to figure out a synergy that is best suited to what the pieces that I'm given. And that's something that you should also look to aspire to do. So let's say instead of Sedge, you're given a Gnar 2. Don't be upset about that. Be like, hell yeah, Gnar 2 is a great unit. And I think, and since the front lines fit in relatively similar comps, you can always tend to play it. And on top of that, when you get a unit like Gnar 2, all of a sudden different options open up. Because Gnar is a wild shapeshifter. So maybe your composition is running Rangers and Gnar, and all of a sudden you're given Swain. And then you can look to run maybe a shapeshifter variant of Rangers that you've never seen before, or a wild variant where maybe you just want to go into something like Warwick, and all of a sudden your frontline has Warwick, Gnar, and then you realize, hell, I'm gonna throw a Volibear in there. So your frontline becomes really flexible based on what you're given, because whatever synergy you kind of commit to are synergies that you can look to use to create whatever comp you can. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Scarra, how did your shirt change color? But what you really should be thinking is, Scarra, thank you so much for making this video, and please let me know what other topics you want to hear from me. This won't be the last pivoting video, but I do think in this video I wanted to highlight the importance of flexibility, because I think first and foremost that's the trait that you're going to want the most when playing these types of games. Anyways, thank you so much. Like, comment, and subscribe below. See you guys later.